Welcome, everyone, to Global Voices, your weekly deep dive into the fascinating world of language and culture. Today, we're tackling a topic that resonates with so many: the intricate journey of learning English, not just as a set of rules, but as an entry point into what some might call a new world. It's more than just grammar, isn't it? It's about a complete shift in perspective, and that can be incredibly challenging. Joining us to share their insights and experiences is someone who has navigated this very path with remarkable success. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to talk about this because it's such a personal and often underestimated aspect of language learning. When you start, you're so focused on the mechanics, the verb conjugations, the vocabulary lists, the tricky pronunciations. It feels like you're just assembling a linguistic machine. But then, as you progress, you realize it's so much more than that. It's about a whole new way of seeing, thinking, and interacting.
Absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it. Initially, it's about the building blocks, right? What were some of those early, perhaps frustrating, mechanical challenges you faced? Was it the irregular verbs, the subtle differences in tenses, or maybe the sheer volume of new words?
Oh, all of the above, honestly. The pronunciation was a big one for me. English has sounds that just don't exist in my native language, so training my mouth and ears to recognize and produce them took a lot of repetition. And the idioms. You'll learn a word, you know its definition, but then it's used in a phrase where it means something entirely different. It's raining cats and dogs. My initial thought was, wait, actual animals falling from the sky? It's a funny example, but it highlights how literal translation often fails, and you're constantly decoding. You just can't take things at face value.
That's such a relatable point. Idioms are a classic stumbling block. But let's dig into that idea of a new world. Beyond the direct translation issues, how did you experience this cognitive or cultural shift? What did it mean to apply the theory of a new world in your day-to-day life as you became more proficient in English?
That's where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit mind-bending at times. Applying the theory of a new world for me meant understanding that English isn't just a different label for the same concepts. Sometimes the concepts themselves are subtly or even vastly different. For instance, the way politeness is expressed or how direct communication is perceived. In some cultures, indirectness is valued, while in many English-speaking contexts, clarity and directness are key. So you're not just translating words, you're translating entire social protocols and ways of thinking. It's like learning a new operating system for your brain.
That's a fantastic analogy, a new operating system. Can you give us a concrete example of how this shift manifested? Maybe a situation where you realized, this isn't just about the words, it's about the underlying cultural logic.
Definitely. A big one was in professional settings. In my native language, challenging a superior or even just expressing a strong disagreement might be seen as disrespectful, or you do it in a very roundabout way. But in an English-speaking workplace, while respect is important, constructive criticism and open debate are often encouraged. I remember holding back opinions because I was worried about offending someone, only to realize that my silence was perceived as disengagement or a lack of ideas. It took a while to understand the nuances of how to assert myself effectively and respectfully in English, because the social rules around disagreement were different. It wasn't just about knowing the right words, but about understanding the right context for those words.
That's a powerful example, highlighting the high stakes in professional communication. So it's not just about ordering coffee, it's about navigating complex social dynamics and even identity. Did you find that this new world language changed aspects of your own personality or how you expressed yourself?
Oh, absolutely. It's like you develop a slightly different persona, or at least you access different facets of your personality when speaking English. Sometimes I feel more direct or assertive in English than I might in my native language, simply because the linguistic structures and cultural expectations lend themselves to that. And humor. My sense of humor, the timing of jokes, it all had to adapt. What's funny in one language might fall flat or even be offensive in another. Learning to understand and then deliver English humor was a huge milestone. You start to think, okay, what's the English way to express this feeling or this idea? It's an ongoing evolution.
It sounds like a profound, almost transformative experience. For anyone listening who's currently in the thick of this journey, wrestling with both the mechanics and this new world theory, what advice would you offer to help them not just survive, but truly thrive and embrace this expansion of their world?
My biggest piece of advice is to embrace imperfection and get comfortable with feeling a bit silly sometimes. You're going to make mistakes. That's how you learn. Don't be afraid to sound unnatural at first because that's part of the process. Also, actively seek out opportunities to engage with native speakers, not just in formal lessons. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, read books, but most importantly, talk to people. Ask questions when you don't understand an idiom or a cultural reference. Be curious. And remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Celebrate the small victories, like understanding a complex joke or successfully navigating a difficult conversation. Each of those moments is a step deeper into that new world, and it's incredibly rewarding.
Such inspiring and practical advice. It really underscores that learning a language, especially one like English that's so widely used, is an ongoing journey of discovery, not just of words, but of cultures, ideas, and even ourselves. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights today. It's been truly illuminating.
My pleasure. It's a journey I wouldn't trade for anything.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in to Global Voices. Join us next time as we explore another facet of our interconnected linguistic world. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep speaking. Welcome back, everyone, to Language Insights, the show where we break down the complex world of language learning into simple, actionable steps. Today, we're tackling a question I hear all the time, especially from those just starting out. I'm a total beginner in English. What's the fastest method to learn? And honestly, what's the best way to do it? It's a huge topic, and to help us navigate it, I'm joined by my wonderful colleague. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's such a relatable question, isn't it? That feeling of standing at the bottom of a really tall mountain when you're just starting with English. You know, that initial overwhelm can be a huge hurdle. Beginners often feel like they need to memorize every single word or understand every grammar rule right from the get-go, and that pressure alone can be paralyzing. They might also worry about making mistakes, which, let's be honest, everyone does when learning a new language. The fear of sounding silly can really hold people back from even trying to speak, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges for anyone starting out.
Absolutely. The fear of making mistakes is so common. But let's get right into it. Is there really a fastest method to learn English? Because, everyone wants that magic bullet, right? What's your take on that idea?
If only there were a single magic bullet. The truth is, fastest is a bit of a tricky term in language learning because it really depends on what fast means to you and what your goals are. However, if we're talking about accelerating progress, then yes, there are definitely highly effective approaches. The most rapid progress usually comes from consistent, daily immersion and active engagement. It's not about finding a secret technique, it's about optimizing your environment and your learning habits. Think of it less as a sprint and more like building momentum every single day. The key is making English a part of your daily life, not just something you do for an hour in a class. That means listening to English, reading English, and trying to speak English, even if it's just to yourself, as much as possible every single day.
So it's about consistent immersion, making it a daily habit. That makes a lot of sense. But for someone who's a complete beginner, immersion can sound a bit daunting. What are some really practical, actionable steps they can take to implement this accelerated approach, especially when they're starting from scratch?
Okay, so for beginners, we want to make immersion manageable and effective. First, focus on high-frequency vocabulary and common phrases. Don't try to learn obscure words. Start with the words and phrases you'd use every single day. Greetings, asking for directions, ordering food, talking about your family, things like that. There are great resources online that list the top 1,000 or 2,000 most common English words, and mastering those will unlock a huge percentage of everyday conversations. Second, speak from day one. I know, it's scary, but even if it's just, hello, how are you, or describing simple objects around you in English, find a language partner or even just record yourself. The point is to activate your speaking muscles early. Third, actively listen. Don't just have English as background noise. Choose simplified podcasts, kids shows with subtitles, or beginner-level audiobooks. Listen for the rhythm, the pronunciation, and try to pick out words you know. And fourth, make mistakes your best friends. Every mistake is a learning opportunity, not a sign of failure. Embrace them, learn from them, and keep going. That active mindset is crucial.
Those are fantastic practical tips. Speak from day one really hits home. It's tough, but it's probably the most direct path to fluency. Now, you talked about the fastest way, but what about the best way? Does the best method differ from the fastest method, or are they quite aligned?
That's a brilliant distinction. While the fastest method focuses on efficiency and accelerating progress, the best way often incorporates sustainability, enjoyment, and personal relevance. They're definitely aligned, but the best way adds a layer of personalization. The best way to learn English is the way that keeps you motivated and engaged over the long term. This means finding methods that you genuinely enjoy. If you love music, listen to English songs and look up the lyrics. If you're into gaming, try playing games in English. If you enjoy cooking, follow English language recipes. The more you can integrate English into your hobbies and interests, the less it feels like studying and more like living. Also, building a support system like finding a language exchange partner or joining an online community can make a huge difference. You get to practice with real people and share your journey, which is incredibly motivating. And remember, the best way is iterative. It evolves as you do. What works in week 1 might need adjusting in month 3.
That's such a powerful point, making it enjoyable and personal. It sounds like the best way is really about tailoring the journey to yourself. Are there any tools or resources you'd particularly recommend for beginners trying to implement these strategies?
Absolutely. For vocabulary, apps like Anki or Quizlet are brilliant for flashcard-based learning, especially with those high-frequency word lists. Duolingo or Babbel can be good starting points for getting used to basic sentence structures, but don't rely solely on them. They're more like stepping stones. For listening, YouTube channels designed for ESL learners like Learn English with Papa Teach Me or VOA Learning English are fantastic. They speak slower and explain vocabulary. And for speaking, platforms like italki or HelloTalk allow you to connect with native speakers for practice, sometimes even for free exchanges. The key is to use a variety of resources, mixing passive learning like listening to music with active learning like practicing conversations. Don't be afraid to experiment and find what resonates with you. And hey, even setting your phone's language to English can be a small but impactful step.
That's a fantastic list of resources. It really shows that there are so many ways to engage. So, to sum up for our listeners who are just embarking on their English learning journey, embrace the beginner stage, focus on consistent, active immersion, speak from day one, make learning enjoyable and personal, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. It sounds like a marathon, not a sprint, but one that can be incredibly rewarding.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. And honestly, the progress you make in those early stages is often the most exciting. You'll be amazed at how quickly you pick up on things once you commit to those daily habits and embrace the process. Don't compare your journey to anyone else's and celebrate every small victory. Consistency, curiosity, and a willingness to make noise, that's the real magic formula.
Wonderful advice to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. This has been incredibly helpful for anyone feeling a bit overwhelmed by the prospect of learning English from scratch. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. We hope this has given you some clear paths forward. Until next time, happy learning.